Only once or twice in the life of each one of us comes such a day as this, when we realize that we're watching history in the making, when we know that generations of Englishmen to come will look back on this day. For May the 12th, 1937, will be one of the dates in English history that the school children will learn maybe 1,000 years from now. Every moment, the thrill of excitement increases. Early in the day, the vast crowd cheers their Royal Highnesses Princess Elizabeth and Margaret Rose, and then their Royal Highnesses the Duchess of Gloucester and the Duchess of Kent. And always the air is filled with the expectant murmur of what must surely be the largest crowd London has ever known, gathered in its hundreds and thousands and millions on this dull spring morning. And now, with a flashing of breastplates and a clatter of hoofs, the moment has come. With slowness and dignity, the coronation coach moves forward, bringing with it, symbolized in our royal family, all the history and tradition of Britain and the Empire. Round the Victoria Memorial and down the Mall goes the roar of cheering, spreading like a slow fire. And most brilliant in the glittering array is the gilded coach, surely the most beautiful vehicle in all the world, a free translation into carved and gilded imagery of all the pomp and tradition of British royalty. Through the Admiralty Arch and below the tall shade of Nelson, there passes in turn the glass coaches bearing the members of the royal family. Queen Mary's procession, and the Royal Cavalcade, led by the Army, Navy and Air Force contingents, the King's bodyguard of the Yeomen of the Guard, the King's escort from the Indian Army, and finally the state coach drawn by the 8 Windsor Greys. As it comes into Parliament Square, the procession enters the most historic part of the royal route to the Abbey, past Big Ben, past Westminster Hall and the Houses of Parliament, to the ancient Church of Westminster, which was first built in the days of Edward the Confessor, whose crown will, before another hour has passed, rest on the head of King George VI. And perhaps it's appropriate that at this moment, as the state coach draws up at the Abbey, we should remember other coronations that have passed. Now, once again, a sovereign comes to the throne, fitted by character and upbringing to carry on a great tradition. King George VI enters Westminster Abbey for his crowning, in the magnificent pattern of his great father. On him the crown is safe. Long may it rest there. With the most solemn and sacred pictures ever taken by a newsreel, we show you, inside the Abbey, the supreme moment when King George is crowned. His Majesty is seated in the coronation chair of St. Edward the Confessor. The Dean of Westminster has brought St. Edward's crown from the altar. The Archbishop of Canterbury takes it. He elevates it with solemnity, lowers it to rest upon the royal brow. The king is crowned. The peers lift up their coronets and put them on, acclaiming their sovereign with the cry, God save the King. The trumpets ring out. Fanfare brings the news to a waiting world that another British king has ascended the throne in the Abbey that for 1,000 years has preserved the pomp of royal Britain. And outside, an empire stands still to welcome its king and queen. After the supreme moment of the crowning, and after the peers have paid homage to the new sovereign in the splendor of the Abbey, comes the still greater homage of a nation and an empire to its king and queen. Before leaving the Abbey, His Majesty has taken off the St. Edward's crown and is wearing the imperial state crown and its priceless regalia. The Queen wears her new crown of platinum and diamonds. Throughout the return drive, the King will carry the scepter with the cross in one hand, the orb with the cross in the other. Thus, with all the outward and visible signs of sovereignty around him, His Britannic Majesty King George VI and his Queen leave the Abbey to ride for mile after mile through jubilating London streets. This morning there were 7 processions making their separate ways to the Abbey. Now they have joined into one amazing cavalcade, so long that while the state coach moves along the embankment, the head of the procession is already at Marble Arch, more than 2.5 miles ahead. Among its glittering uniforms and waving plumes, not the smallest corner, not the least citizen of the empire is forgotten. Not one branch of its life is unrepresented. And for the second time today, the royal coach crosses Trafalgar Square, and 100,000 faces are turned towards it, and 100,000 throats voice their loyalty. And now the procession passes through some of the most famous streets of the city of Westminster, Pall Mall and St. James's Street, where London's clubland has grown on the ashes of many a noble home of the past. And at Piccadilly Circus, Eros looks out from behind the safety of his hoarding, looks out on a scene that would have brought joy to the heart of a Beau Brummel. But would he have recognized the modern Piccadilly Circus that has changed so completely in the last 100 years? Regent Street has changed too, and Oxford Circus has been completely rebuilt. But everywhere there's the same joy in the hearts of the people. The face of London changes, but London's loyalty transcends the years. And the procession turns homewards through Hyde Park. Here we get a last glimpse of the Prime Minister, Mr. Stanley Baldwin, for whom this day marks the climax of a distinguished career. And here's Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Kent, and the band of the Scots Greys. Hyde Park Corner, to revive memories of the last coronation procession, as it wound its stately way 26 years ago. And so back to the palace, which their Majesties left over 5 hours ago. 5 hours of terrific emotional strain, with the solemnity of the service in the Abbey and the fatigue of the long drive. And once again, our royal family stands on the most famous balcony in the world for the final climax of this glorious coronation day. And we join with London, with the Empire, with the world, in crying, God save our King and Queen.